We all know the rules when you're driving up the Cape. You don't mess around near the water's edge. Saltwater crocs aren't just animals up here. They're the absolute apex. And if you live in this country long enough, you get a feel for how they operate. You learn to read the slides on the muddy banks. You watch the surface ripples. You keep your wits about you at every single creek crossing. What happened to me on Frenchman's Track 2 years ago wasn't a croc. I know how they behave, and this thing wasn't playing by the rules of nature. I was travelling solo in my dual cab, pushing through a late afternoon run after a massive downpour had turned the track into absolute soap. I hit this unnamed creek crossing, just a dark, deep, tea-coloured pool hemmed in by suffocatingly thick tropical scrub on both sides. The water was higher than I'd anticipated. Halfway through, my front wheels dropped into a hidden washout. The diff bottomed out on a submerged log, and that was it. Stuck fast in the mud, right in the middle of the dark water. The sun was already dropping below the canopy. That eerie, bruised purple light was bleeding into the bush, and the temperature was plummeting hard and fast. I didn't want to get out of the cab, but I had no choice. I scrambled out onto the bonnet, pulled the winch cable, and waded knee-deep through black water to secure the hook around a massive old paperbark tree on the far bank. Got back in the cab, hooked up the UHF remote, engaged the winch. The line went taut. The steel cable groaned under tension, humming like a guitar string. The front of the truck started to lift out of the muck, and then it stopped. The winch motor was screaming, drawing massive current, but we weren't budging. I looked out the windscreen, expecting to see the paperbark tearing out of the ground. It wasn't moving. The tree was solid. But the winch line wasn't just taut, it was angling down. Straight down, deep into the pitch-black water directly in front of the bull bar. Then, the front of my 3-ton truck was violently yanked downward, the bonnet buried under the surface of the creek. Something in that deep, stagnant water was actively pulling back on the cable. I hit the spool release on the remote. Too late. With a deafening metallic crack that echoed out through the empty jungle, the heavy steel recovery hook didn't just snap. It was sheared clean off the end of the line. The tension released so violently, the truck slammed back down into the mud, water sloshing up and over the doors. I sat there in the cab, frozen. The ripples were massive, rolling out from the center of the pool in slow, heavy rings. And then the silence hit like a wall. No insects, no night birds starting up, just absolute, suffocating, dead quiet. Through the dark water, something began to rise. It wasn't the long, low, V-shaped silhouette of a salty. This was massive, broad, heavily built, like the submerged back of a giant, shaggy animal. Something coated in slick, matted riverweed. It didn't make a single sound, but the sheer displacement of water sent a wave washing over my bonnet. 2 eyes broke the surface, dim, sickly yellow, catching the faint glow of my park lights. They weren't positioned on the top of the head the way a reptile's are. They were forward-facing, staring directly through my windscreen, with a heavy, considered intelligence that had nothing animal about it. Then came the sound. Not a hiss, not a croc's bellow. A deep, booming, resonant roar that vibrated straight up through the floorboards of the chassis. A sound so primordial and old that my stomach dropped completely out of me. A sound that didn't belong to anything alive in this century. I didn't think. I threw the transfer case into low range, slammed reverse, and absolutely buried the accelerator. The mud tires screamed and clawed at the bank behind me, and by some miracle, by something I still can't fully account for, the truck broke free from the washout and hauled itself backward up the track. I didn't stop driving until I hit the wide open expanse of the main bypass road. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely hold the wheel straight. Growing up in this country, We all heard about the bunyip. We had the storybook in primary school, the bunyip of Berkeley's Creek. We treat it like a kid's myth, a campfire yarn, something to make the littlies squeal before bed. It doesn't feel like a joke anymore. A heavy, fur-matted water creature, a dog-like face. Something ancient that haunts the deep billabongs and devours anything that steps into its domain. I don't have the background in Indigenous law to say whether they're even meant to be up on the Cape, or what the traditional owners call the thing that guards those ancient, untouched waterholes. I'm not going to pretend I do. All I know is what I saw, what held that cable, what looked back at me through that windscreen with those pale, yellow eyes, patient and heavy and old, like it had been sitting in that deep water since long before any of us arrived and started driving our tracks through country that was never ours to drive through. There is something in the deep waterholes up north, and it does not want us there.